we are living in extremely difficult times. As I said, I'm afraid that anyone who is sitting there, you know, waiting for 2012, 21st or 3rd of December might be caught napping, because some of these might happen prior to that. And anyway, nothing is going to happen on 21st, 23rd of December 2012. Nothing at all, unless some of these things happen to occur with it. The Mayans never said it would. It's just that people have capitalized on it and made it out to be either something wonderful or something, you know, it's all going to happen on a certain neat and tidy date in the calendar. It's not. So, what should we do? What can we do to protect ourselves? So now there's loads of works that tell you what you could do on a practical level to ensure your security. My good friend Dr. Brooks Agnew, who spoke to you on Friday, has an excellent section in his book on practical arrangements about the supply of food and supply of water and so on. Everyone will be very wise, as they do in some countries, to make sure that you've got a decent supply of food stored away. I mean, my own teacher, Ranta, has been preaching this for the last 25 years or more. It would be very, very foolish not to have some supplies on hand for a long period when the stores mightn't be able to supply us, or the burger stands mightn't be able to feed us. I remember when my book on herbs was published in December 2007, I went down to Portland to do a blitz of some bookstores arranged by the publishers, and on my way down there, a very heavy storm occurred, and the freeway, I-5, was flooded to a depth of 10 feet near Chihills, about 20 miles from where I live. And what I didn't know was that most of the trucks that supply Seattle and Olympia and the major cities in the Northwest all come from California, more or less, and they couldn't get through. And some of the stores in Seattle were running short of very basic food items within 2 or 3 days. Not to speak of a longer outage, which wouldn't be just a flood, obviously, but something much more serious. So you would be well advised to have medical supplies, food, above all, water, clothing, you know, if there's a large occurrence, which I didn't touch on at all because there's only so much time today, like the blowing up of the supervolcano, for instance. So there were 2 programs then that Jesus had to do. There are 2 programs that you and I have to do. And if you don't attend to one, you can't do the other. If you don't get the old junk out, it's still alive and well and functioning there. The natural state of the universe is abundance. Abundance. And it's so hard for you and me to realize that, because we are accustomed to think in what I call somewhere the trance of scarcity. We have hypnotized ourselves into thinking that things are scarce, that there's only so much to go around, and that if I don't get my stuff first, someone else will get it and I'm going to be left short. So this leads to all of the issues that divide our society today so awfully, such as greed, competition, and trying to overcome and compete. Even our children's games are all about competition, defeating someone else. And that all comes from a conviction that things are scarce. They're not. The quantum field is abundant, and the key to doing it is to learn how to manipulate the quantum field. Jesus was a master of the quantum field. He didn't come to be a suffering savior, but to teach us how to be masters as well. And so then we see the basic reality behind the quantum mechanics and quantum physics, that a thought produces what we pictured in the thought. Obviously, saying that the basic component of which everything is made is in fact thought. It's logical that it would happen. And the trouble, I remember when we were doing What the Bleep, I think I said something which caused me more trouble from people afterwards than anything else. That I said positive thinking is, for the most part, just a thin smear on the top of a vast boiling cauldron of negative thought. And we think we've changed what is actually generating in the quantum field. We haven't even touched it. So that's why it's so illusory. And people often say to me, oh, I've been thinking very positively all my life. And then I would say, well, how come you have a heart problem? How come you have migraine? How come you have a fungus infection or diabetes or cancer. Because if you were thinking positively all your life, you would have none of these things right now. So our bodies are something like a computer printout. You know, when you press print on your computer and the printer spews out a page, the page is our bodies. And that tells us how we've been thinking all our lives, and for the most part, actually it's not a very encouraging picture. So given the number of problems our bodies have with sickness and infirmity, and how that mirrors our fundamental thoughts or mindset, how can we go about changing this? And as I said, this is a matter of urgency because of the crisis that we're going to face. Storing food and water supplies, clothes and medicines, etc. obviously are excellent things and urgent things to do, but they only take us so far. We need to do something much more urgent, which we should have always been doing, because this process is our birthright. So what kind of thoughts produce reality, or what kind of thoughts will produce reality different from the unsatisfactory one I've already created? I mean, you don't need to go anywhere to learn how to create reality. You have been doing it since the day you were born. The problem is, look what we've been doing. I mean, the biggest problem of our world today is victimization, the conviction of victimization, the conviction of scarcity. And that totally undermines our power, which is in the next seal or the next chakra. So how can I change the realities that plague us? Sickness, infirmity, aging, luck, or bad luck. If you could master the control of those things in your life, wouldn't you say then you've mastered real power? Just like the person who dived into that crocodile pool, knowing nothing about what he faced, but knowing that nothing could happen to him or her, that he himself had not deeply accepted in quote-unquote terms of God within. So, sickness, infirmity, aging, luck or bad luck would not have a place in our lives anymore. If we ever wanted those abilities, we need them now. So what kind of thoughts produce reality? Those that have been accepted into the program of the God mind, or I call it the superconscious mind. And I'm not using that term, let it be stated here now, in any sense of Freudian or Jungian analysis. So I'm just using it in another sense. The superconscious brain and mind is what we need to look at. And the conscious brain occupies about 17% of the brain mass, according to the neuroscientists. The superconscious occupies the remainder, 83%. The conscious brain controls 2 to 4% of our perception and behavior. So most of our perception and behavior is controlled by the superconsciousness, 96 to 98%. The conscious brain can process 2,000 bytes of information per second, still well ahead of the fastest computers. But the God brain can process, that's not a typo, 400 billion bytes per second. Now obviously it makes sense that this is the entity within our makeup that we ought to be in much more close contact or control with, right? And this is the peanut brain here, the conscious brain, which we think is everything. And I couldn't do this to scale because the room wouldn't hold the superconsciousness to scale. But that's what we're dealing with here. And all, as I said, all of our movements of self-help over the last 50 years have focused here, including the law of attraction and positive thinking, etc. And yet here's the one that accomplishes. So there was no hope from the word go. So our reality is changed by the way we focus on the quantum field. And it's the superconsciousness, this big one you saw here, that programs the quantum field. This is the fatal flaw in things, for instance, like those self-help movements I mentioned. So we have to work through the superconscious mind.